Joining me live is former US State Department official Captain Matthew Hoh, who served as a Marine captain in Iraq and as US State Department official in Afghanistan, and was the first US official known to resign in protest over the Afghan war. Very good morning, sir. US withdrawal from Afghanistan, what's your overview of it?
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me on the program, Tim. It's unfortunate that this is the condition that the Afghans find themselves in. The Afghans are, Afghanistan is not in danger of an economic collapse. It is already in an economic collapse. It was in an economic collapse before the Taliban took over. So as your report suggested, Afghans are in a very precarious position with no idea what is going to come next. In regards to the victory by the Taliban, it certainly is something that was inevitable. I think, again, as noted in your piece just there, the amount of force, the amount of coercion, the amount of terror that the United States utilized to attempt to bring democracy, an attempt that never was realized because every election in Afghanistan was incredibly fraudulent, basically stolen by the American-supported regimes. That if you have to use that level of fear, that level of terror, that level of coercion, again, as your report suggested, it was never going to work to begin with. So this is I think this has been inevitable. Certainly was the reason why I resigned in 2009, or one of the reasons. Certainly a reason why many people, including many Australians, have been against the West's military occupation of Afghanistan. And now, of course, the Afghans are the ones who have been suffering and are likely continue to suffer.
What have you made of the politics, particularly over the last few years? Because it was President Donald Trump that had to deal with the Taliban and the dates were set. And then, of course, we've had the election and Joe Biden's taken the top job. And this is what's happened.
Well, let me say that I was very impressed and refreshed by the report I just watched done by your network. In the United States, it's very difficult to find a conversation about Afghanistan that does not basically come back to some form of political finger pointing, of some kind of attempt at partisan point scoring. It's simply amazing in the U.S. how Biden supporters want to blame Trump, Trump supporters want to blame Biden, and neither side will acknowledge the complicity of the entire American political system in this war. The entire, whether the government was controlled by Republicans or Democrats, each successive administration up until the Biden administration tried to win this war militarily. And so I think that the partisan nature, the political nature of the conversation about this war, how this war focuses on the Americans as opposed to the Afghans, is symbolic of the way the United States conducts its foreign policy. But it's symbolic of many problems we have here in the United States as well, where we can't even deal with a pandemic problem without having it be all about political finger pointing.
It's an extraordinary place, Afghanistan. If you look into the hundreds and hundreds of years of history, it's so linked to everything that's going on in Pakistan and India. What do you expect? What do you expect going forward with the Taliban in charge? Are they going to change their ways, particularly in and around laws with women?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, it's just the only way we'll tell is by time. I think Afghanistan is at a critical juncture right now. This cruel peace that has come about, where the Taliban have been victorious, where they have, they're attempting to consolidate their power now. This cruel peace, this unjust peace, because certainly the Taliban is nobody anyone could root for. But the problem being is that for the last 2 decades, the Americans, the West has been in Afghanistan, giving the people of Afghanistan via the barrel of a rifle 2 choices: either support a theocratic repressive government by the Taliban or support a kleptocratic predatory government of warlords and drug lords, which is what the Taliban just opposed. So there's this possibility for a peace right now that can exist, and if you have a sensation of the cycle of violence, then you have a chance to rebuild and to reconcile. Or there is the second path, where there are these warlords still holding out, warlords that have long histories with the United States, very close relationships with the American CIA. And I can guarantee you there are people here in the United States who are saying, look, this doesn't look very different than it did on September 11th, 2001. Taliban controlled most of the country. There are some warlords holding out. We did it once before, and in the great spirit of the hubris that comes out of Washington, D.C., we can do it better this time. So that's the other path, the path I really fear for the Afghans, is that outsiders, and again, as was mentioned in the report you had, the interview with the man in Kabul, that if there is continuing to be foreign meddling, foreign interference, an attempt by foreign countries to manipulate Afghanistan, well, we've seen what that looks like, and it looks like the catastrophe and the devastation of the last 40 years.
And people are very fearful where you live, where we live, of terrorism. Do you think we will see a spike?
No, I don't think so. I think the idea that somehow the Western occupation of Afghanistan has been successful in countering terrorism is just simply not true. Look, on 9/11, and according to the American FBI, Al-Qaeda was 400 people total worldwide, and most of them were not in Afghanistan. Yes, the Al-Qaeda senior leadership was there, but if you look at the 9/11 attacks, they were planned, and preparation training took place in Germany and Pakistan, in the United States and Spain, Malaysia, et cetera. What happens after the invasion of Afghanistan, the occupation, Al-Qaeda goes from a group of 400 people total worldwide to an organization with tens and tens and thousands of members that have taken over entire cities and regions. They still control parts of Syria, as well as offshoots like Boko Haram or Islamic State, et cetera. So in my view, this has been a failed enterprise at curbing terrorism, because it really has expanded terrorism worldwide. And it has not kept the United States safe. Since 9/11, Al-Qaeda has launched 62 attacks against the United States. Thank God none of them have been as terrible or as successful as the 9/11 attacks. But the idea that somehow occupying Afghanistan with military forces keeps us safe from terrorism, I think is just not founded in the reality of, one, how terrorists actually operate, act, plan, conduct these operations, and two, by the fact that, you look at the growth of Al-Qaeda over the last 20 years. Look at the fact that in 2001, the U.S. government said there were 4 international terror groups in Afghanistan and Pakistan, and now the United States government, 20 years later, says there's 20 international terror groups in Afghanistan and Pakistan. I don't understand how you can look at that situation and say we increased the number of international terror groups by a factor of 5 and say this has been a successful occupation. See, these wars throughout the Muslim world have been successful because there's been an absence of another attack like 9/11. There wasn't an attack like 9/11 before. 9/11 could just have been the one time Al-Qaeda got it right, could be the outlier. Meanwhile, again, as I said, Al-Qaeda and other terror groups have expanded over these last 20 years, not been eliminated.
Captain Matthew Hoh, thank you so much for your insight. I really appreciate you coming on the program.
Thank you, and have a good day.